Hello, I'm David Maunder, and as part of my CPEE work-based unit in semester 2 of 2016, I'll be presenting a case, an investigation into how to harmonise the asset management strategies of two sealed road networks, and I'll be using as a case study the long-term management of the new Armidale Regional Council sealed road network of the previously Armidale Generic Council and Guyra Council, using a pavement management system. The purposes of this exercise is quite clear. Following the amalgamation of Armidale Generic and Guyra councils, the Guyra councils and Armidale councils asset management staff in the new merged council authority or road agency will need to consider how best to combine and harmonise their work practices that relate to asset management of the sealed road network. But equally, following an audit process of 2015 of both councils before amalgamation, it was considered by the council auditors that each organisation had differing approaches to the way that they both manage and value their assets. Therefore, a harmonisation process would be very important. The objectives of this study are multiple. They are firstly to assess the two separate networks of the previous two councils and the long-term renewal requirements of each council that those councils had in place previous to amalgamation, and then look to harmonise these strategies with the use of optimisation and predictive software that replicates the manual process to quantify the savings and or define the overall long-term pavement improvement that could be improved by using the advanced modelling and optimisation techniques so as to plan future maintenance requirements or trends as a result of various treatment scenarios that decision makers within the new council road agency could consider. This study will involve scenarios principally of harmonising the management strategies with the existing maintenance and capital budget allocations for each ex-council, which may well reduce the current condition of one council and improve the overall condition of the other. The assessment will likely provide scenarios that allow for the road agency road management decision makers to have strategies that move away from automatically selecting worst first roads and road segments to optimise works that allow for earlier intervention as per sound asset management principles. It is often said that it is less costly to rehabilitate a road than to fully construct. It must be noted that road agencies face widely different physical and social and economic environments. They have different organisational objectives and serve stakeholders who have a variety of requirements. As a result, many road agencies have independently developed detailed processes and analytical tools that support the day-to-day management and planning of road-related assets. The processes and approaches are typically generic to the specific road agency, and as such, the management and renewal, rehab and maintenance of their sealed roads has been shaped over many years of successive road agency management, endemic to that network. The ability to merge or amalgamate two or more road agencies will necessitate the harmonising and alignment of these management practices. The question comes up as to what road management parameters should the two councils' asset managers look to align as part of this exercise. This should be an ongoing program of asset management for each respective network. A comprehensive sealed road network harmonisation process for the new council should assess work practices currently employed by the two previous councils, maintenance and rehab or renewal strategies that are utilised, standards and specifications that are adhered to or not adhered to, levels of service, their existing budgets, both operational and capital, their valuations that have been carried out as per state rulings, unit rates of specific works as like for like and actual replacement, and the depreciation and residuals. How can we do this analysis? How did I do the analysis? If a road agency asset management team know the aspects of the sealed road network that they manage and record and keep up to date by the two councils, in this case with the two respective networks, they would keep information such as the type of pavement and wearing course of a particular road segment that constitutes the complete road network. They would know with experience and collection of ongoing data the current road condition, both structural and surface, of the pavement and wearing course. They would keep records of treatments, rehabs and reconstruction and maintenance. They would likely know the traffic data and the type of traffic classes, i.e. how many heavies there are, how many big trucks are going over their roads. These then can be used in what's called a pavement management system, or PMS, that should incorporate a recognised pavement deterioration and mode of failure progression, or a software, and employs predictive algorithms and programmed intervention times to strategise or present scenarios for longer term treatments that the new council road agency can consider. At the core of most predictive modelling techniques is the aim of minimising overall life cycle costs while meeting minimum levels of service. This involves finding the optimum time to replace the asset rather than continuing to meet increasing maintenance costs. The PMS tool can then be used to combine but also compare the two previous networks of sealed roads previously managed by the two amalgamated councils, and then by applying the modelling and predictive or forecasting processes for the new network, that a host of possible treatment and funding scenarios can be considered by respective asset management, financial management, and elected reps for the political decision making for longer term and implementation as part of the harmonisation process. As part of this investigation, I need to consider the case for combining two sealed networks into one. The PMS will provide a tool in estimating long-term renewal requirements. Long-term renewal requirements consider developing the long-term renewal funding and works programming that is the ultimate aim after combining various pavement and associated parameters. The ability of that PMS then is to run modelling and predictive routines that will aid in running a host of different scenarios or work rules for the two networks, i.e. operational maintenance and capital rehabs and renewals, which would be very timely and consuming and complex if they were carried out manually. The PMS software is able to very quickly consider a very large number of treatment options per road segment, and then prioritise these into a works program reflective of the host agency's preferences for pavement overall improvement or reducing user and agency costs, or combinations of the two. The PMS output works programs will then provide an alignment strategy for long-term renewal funding programs for the individual networks and thence the combined network. In conducting this investigation and exercise, I've had to consider what methods and what tools are there out there to use to conduct this investigation. What systems are there in place to do this now, i.e. a manual approach or as software? What methods will be used to compare, contrast and propose strategies for the moving forward with a long-term approach to managing the new combined sealed network? Traditionally, the tried and trusted approach to pavement management systems for many road agencies or councils has been to manually develop their long-term renewal funding and works program from a series of intuitive and manual steps that would identify the road components that are predicted to require renewal in the next 10-20 years based on condition, performance and the cost of service, complaints and elected rep or officer input. For these predicted interventions, the agency would then review the estimates of remaining useful life and update the renewal schedule. They would calculate risks for each intervention and identify high-risk projects. They would then review the 20-year schedule with operational staff, particularly in the first critical 0 to 5 years. They would scope out appropriate renewal projects and select the treatment options which minimises whole-of-life costs, and determining project costs, benefits and savings and availability of external funding for each project. Estimating of the 10-year renewal funding is a critical step, as is determining available renewal funding. They would compare with the likely available renewal funding, and then if out of balance, they would then need to consider to review their standards. They would review available funding from external sources, reviewing of their useful lives, changing the road link management strategies to roads of more economic significance. They would review again, assess the risk criteria and review treatments. They would finally adopt a renewal schedule. They would then re-estimate the 10-year renewal, reprioritise projects, and then review with Council for adoption of the final program. Since the 1980s, there has been much more development of network-level pavement management systems. The tools I plan on using for this exercise will be using a PMS software that incorporates the Highway Design and Maintenance Standards Model, or HDM. The HDM was developed by the World Bank and is a versatile tool for studying the economic viability of alternative road improvement and maintenance strategies. It can be used at both network and project level, and it is well suited to the study of economic benefits of strengthening pavement, making relatively minor geometric improvements, and providing a smoother riding service. This investigation into the strategic alignment of the two previous sealed road networks will assess the way forward by using a PMS and software as tools to allow for longer-term forecasting or predictions of the required capital and operational works. This is in alignment with the manual process, but with the assistance of the number crunching of the software, and will assist in the preparation of numerous harmonisation financial strategies for the new network. However, it is not anticipated that a first run with the PMS software will present a watertight case for the new council to move forward with. However, it should allow for identification of the important information gaps and improvement works that will need to be progressed. At a minimum, and with solid road pavement experienced engineering validation, the initial programs for longer-term works programs for the new council should be created. Network level pavement management systems. In order to use a pavement management system, one must have a pavement management system, and what data should be available. The two sealed road networks, as part of this investigation under the Armidale and Guyra Council, should or would and do consist of a correctly created register containing roads and road segments, and a disparate road numbering system for each individual road identification. The road register containing the individual roads will then display a suitably created segmentation or blocking of that road for better identification of condition assessment. Rather than be considering the whole of the road, the expansive road, we break the road down into segments for more workable pieces. The register of roads and segments will have a host of condition parameters collected in the field, such as roughness, rutting, cracking, that is industry recognised nationally and collected by professional means. The roads within the register will be suitably filtered to allow for hierarchical prioritisation or relative importance of the road, using data such as traffic equivalent standard axles, strategic economic corridors, and prioritisation. The register will also likely have all available treatments and rehab processes that have been carried out, including reseals. They will have the age of construction or reseal, allowing for comparison, modelling and forecasting of works. These factors, plus a host of other professionally documented data retaining or pertaining to each road and segment within the network, should then allow for differing complexity levels and techniques of pavement management. The benefits of using a pavement management system for this investigation. The primary objective of a PMS should be to supply information that is useful in determining the road network being considered. The asset practitioners need this information for their decision making. It is a tool to assist in getting the right money in the right place at the right time, and the PMS should encourage a long-term view of maintenance management to be taken by considering preventative maintenance, service to road users and value for money. It should be seen as an integrated and formalised set of procedures, standards and data which facilitate planning, implementing and monitoring maintenance of the road network. And its primary objective is useful in determining for the road network being considered as getting the right money to the right place at the right time. And it should encourage a long-term view of maintenance management to be taken by considering preventative maintenance, service to road users and value for money. Its goal should be to include the production of longer-term and shorter-term works programs that optimise benefits to the users of the road facilities and to minimise cost to the agency responsible for the network. Thus, the PMS needs to be able to determine the most appropriate routine maintenance and treatments to apply to each road section over a period of time in order to best achieve the objectives of the road authority. As I've indicated, there is various software in the field that exist to provide or facilitate the pavement management system. One such system is produced by the Snowy Mountains Engineering Corporation, SMEC, which have developed a PMS capable of using the HDM deterioration modelling. The tool used to undertake the analysis for this case study was the SMEC PMS system. The SMEC PMS uses the World Bank Highway Development Model to model the development and progression of pavement distresses, to determine the effect of maintenance treatments on current and future condition of seal road networks, and to prepare a host of forecast treatment works programs for the road agency based on deterioration principles of the HDM and intervention triggers for host road agency preferences, i.e. preferred road roughness or minimise cracking, etc. This diagram provides a snapshot of the processes that sit within the SMEC PMS, consisting of the data collection, which involves the sealed road pavement condition, traffic, the pavement structure, the treatment history, etc., that are fed into a database from which the current condition is modelled. The modelling process will use life cycle analysis and be fed in via optimisation techniques, which I'll discuss further in the report. These optimization techniques will then produce a series of works programs, a network analysis, budget predictions and financial reports. Mapping is also available with the SMEC PMS. A quick overview of the condition data used in a PMS modelling include roughness, rutting and cracking as the primary condition parameters. Roughness is a measure of the shape of the pavement and is a good indicator of the health of the pavement layers. The measurement is carried out commonly using an instrumented vehicle that uses multiple laser beams to measure the profile of the road at highway speeds, with the measurements set by international standards and are non-subjective. The greater the road roughness, then the higher are the vehicle operating costs, and roughness is less important in a low-speed environment. The treatment for reducing roughness generally requires a shape-correcting overlay or, at most, pavement reconstruction. The lowest roughness measurement recorded from the roughness survey for the Armidale and Gyra pavement condition survey was 38 NASRA counts, while the highest measurement was 260 NASRA counts. Roughness information can be used for a variety of purposes, including road network condition monitoring, i.e. performance measures, screening of candidate treatment sections, network level prioritization and whole of life cycle cost analysis, to assessing the suitability of a road for its users and the relative conditions of roads and networks, and predicting the cost of travelling on the road. The SMEC PMS involves much number crunching. The condition data as collected that is fed then into the SMEC PMS is capable of then being produced as a series of health indices. For this assessment, I'll be primarily using the PCI, or Pavement Condition Index. This is a summary condition score that is calculated for each road segment based on the levels of each of the individual distresses. The PCI is calculated based on a point system or a deduct point system where the default score for a road pavement in perfect condition is given as 10, but then points are deducted for each different type of distress recorded based on the severity of that distress. Once a PCI is calculated for each section, individual road section, it is then possible to calculate the area weighted average PCI for the entire network. By monitoring the network PCI on a year-to-year basis, it is possible to check if the overall road network is improving or declining in condition. The SMEC PCI has also been used to conduct benchmark studies for all of the councils that are running the SMEC PMS. Other parameters and characteristics of the road network that the SMEC PMS can utilise. These primarily include traffic, and the collecting of traffic information consistently facilitates the strategic planning of road networks. Traffic volumes and trends in vehicle classifications are an extremely important criterion in choosing the appropriate road profile configuration. They can vary along a link, and different road profiles are appropriate. The type of vehicle using a road can have a major influence on road geometry and pavement structure. Traffic information should be collected based on the Austroads vehicle classification system. Other data to be placed into the PMS include road hierarchies and treatment history. Good records of past renewal service and pavement treatments can provide valuable insight into the estimation of component useful lives. As part of the exercise of determining the overall condition of the two council networks, we need to consider what is the current state of play. What data do we have from these two organisations and their seal road networks? We need to collect this and have this data for the PMS to derive the current status of the two networks' pavement health. As part of the overall transition from the two separate seal road networks to one complete network under the management by Armidale Regional Council as the road management agency, then an assessment of the previous networks was required to allow for a structured harmonisation of condition. A condition survey of both councils was carried out by the same professional road condition assessment consultants, Australian Surface Testing, in both 2008 and 2014. AST utilised modern techniques such as a profilometer to generate roughness and rutting data and cracking data. Surface texture, edge breakage, flushing defects, etc. are all collected for both the Armidale and the Guyra sealed road network. Whilst cracking data was not obtained for the Armidale network in 2000, while it was obtained for the Armidale network in 2008 and 2014, Guyra Council elected not to have cracking data collected in 2014. As such, the two road networks were combined into a SMEC PMS database and processed to generate all possible Austroads pavement health indices, combined with data relating to road hierarchy, the age of the surface, all surface treatments, the history of renewals or reconstruction or rehab of the pavement, and an estimate and actual traffic ESAs and breakdown of the vehicle class and percentage of each individual class. This complete inventory of data was then assembled for predictive modelling by the PMS. The first parameter to be obtained from the modelling was the PCI, or the Pavement Condition Index, for all road hierarchies. This was then further refined and filtered to obtain an area-weighted average for each previous council network, and then further refined to obtain the area-weighted mean of each sub-network category, for example for arterials, collectors, local access for both urban and rural roads. What do we know of the existing networks? We have two rural regional councils located in northern New South Wales, referred to as the New England. The rural sealed road networks are subject to reasonably low traffic volumes in the rural areas. Another significant feature is of the higher altitude of the two road networks. In winter, sub-zero and frosting influences are a major issue, particularly of Guyra, which sits at about 1200 to 1400 metres in elevation. The Armidale sealed road length is 412 kilometres for both local and regional status roads, of which 233 kilometres of rural and 178 kilometres of urban, and a total of 1,081 segments. The Guyra sealed road network is about the same, of 431 kilometres, again for both local and regional. However, their network is predominantly rural. They have almost 400 kilometres of sealed rural roads and 35 kilometres of urban roads, comprising 510 segments. It's also worth noting the yearly budgets for each council, that is Armidale and Guyra. Prior to the amalgamation, the Guyra Council budgeted for around about $1.3 million for capital works and about $1.3 million for their operational or maintenance works for their sealed road network. In the 2017 financial year, Armidale has allocated approximately $5.4 million to capital and about $1 million to operational works. Again, these are a combination of general fund or rate income plus all grants. It's worth noting that the last 2016-2017 financial years, there's been a higher proportion of grants, particularly in the road to recovery area. As indicated previously, the major step in being able to do the condition modelling and predictive optimisation work for both the two previous council road networks and the new network is importing all of the condition data into a PMS. As such, the two road networks were combined into a SMEC pavement management system database and then processed to generate all of the possible health indices. The first parameter to be obtained, as I've indicated, was the PCI for all of the road hierarchies, which was then further filtered down to obtain the PCI weighted, area weighted, for each of the different hierarchy segments. The case study exercise is one of applying or a combination of optimised strategies for the combined Armidale and Guyra sealed road subnetworks, using the benchmark of PCI, the Pavement Condition Index, and roughness minimisation against the optimising parameters of reducing user and road agency costs, or the overall maximising of the network pavement condition, the harmonisation of the condition of the two networks, and then to set the path for further detailed modelling, and an overall reduction of or minimisation of maintenance and cost that the new merged council can use in both community consultation, levels of service, and then setting yearly budgets for the capital and operational road management divisions within its long-term financial plan, this resourcing plan and operational plan. After the compilation of all of the road segments into a combined database, the software was then used to determine the pavement condition index, which is a combination of all the health indices of cracking and roughness and rutting. This graph shows the split between the Armidale and Guyra area weighted pavement condition index for all of the sub-hierarchy of roads, including arterials, collectors and local access for both networks in the rural and urban environment. The total area weighted index for the Guyra roads falls at 6.77 and for Armidale at 8.08. However, if we look at the breakdown of those two networks, one can notice that the predominant road network in Gyra is 220 kilometres of local access rural that shows a PCI of a bit over 6. This, under the area weighted system, will have then a major influence on the overall network condition of 6.77. Armidale shows a reasonably consistent average PCI. Of note is the lesser rural arterial value of 6.23. However, with a minimum length of about 31 kilometres, this is not overly significant. Generally a pretty stable PCI. This is another interesting graph showing the overall makeup of the sealed road network of both councils. It's interesting to note that there's 240 to 250 kilometres of road, sealed road, in about the 7-metre width, but also that there is up to 230 kilometres, or 30% of the overall network, that is approximately 4 metres in width. Much of these narrow sealed road lengths are in the ex-Gyra Council. After having placed all of the data in its requisite database, the SMEC PMS will now be used for analysis. The tool used to undertake this analysis, as indicated, is the SMEC PMS software, which uses the World Bank HDM models. The optimization factors are going to be run in one of two ways, either to determine the maximum network condition that can be achieved based on a nominated annual budget constraint, or secondly, to determine the annual funding required to achieve an annual target network condition level. The optimization parameters that can be selected are maximizing the network asset value, minimizing the road user costs, minimizing the routine maintenance costs, minimizing the total user costs, i.e. user cost plus agency costs, and lastly maximizing the network pavement condition index. In order to run the SMEC PMS to do the assessment and optimization, to create the strategic works programs, we use what's called a work rule to select candidate segments. The work rule created for this modelling exercise involves approximately 5 major steps. I've indicated 2 here, and for these, this becomes a filtering process using roughness, cracking, in ways by which, for example, in option 1, to determine whether the host of candidate segments that we have where rehabilitation of spray seals is appropriate. If, for example, the surface is currently a spray seal, then the software opts to replace with a spray seal, not with an asphalt. And in option 1, it will only be applied if roads are in an urban and rural environment, i.e. all. If wide cracking must be greater than 40%, then roughness must be less than 90%. And if wide cracking must be greater than 25%, if roughness is greater than 90%. The filtering process allows for the host of roughness, rutting and cracking indices to produce the candidates of the roads or the road segments that will need to have optimization applied, These are the road candidates for which we need to look at for future asset maintenance. Obviously, anything of nil roughness and nil cracking won't be selected. The candidates will be looking at those sections of road exhibiting bad roughness and bad cracking. As mentioned, the SMEC PMS will be used to create the strategic works programs. The major component of the SMEC PMS is its ability to optimize and prioritize those road candidates under a regime of agency and user preferences, or aiming towards an overall improvement of the network to provide the short and longer term strategic goals for the asset management of the whole network. The basic explanation of the 5 methodologies that I have used or could have used are: for the one, maximizing the asset value, whereby this methodology, if selected, would consider the best treatment available to maximize the life of the wearing course. Asphalts are of course the optimum treatment, providing the maximum life. So if the rule base allows, it will select asphalt over a spray seal or a micro seal if I select this methodology. It is used if a council has a healthy budget, as naturally you will utilise the best treatments available to maximise the life of the asset. The second optimisation strategy is to minimise agency costs. This is a scenario similar to a slash and burn methodology. Its primary aim is to lower council's costs and do what the system sees as essential works only. If the council required road funds to be directed elsewhere and asked you to cut the budget and do only essential works, then this is the methodology that would be chosen. For example, if you had a $5 million budget, the system may only spend $3 million on what it sees as essential works, therefore saving council $2 million to be directed elsewhere. Because the traffic AADTs or equivalent standard axles are a key driver, then the methodology will only look at high volume roads to perform essential works and allow low volume roads to deteriorate. Not a recommended strategy. The third optimization strategy is to minimize user costs. The user is of course the travelling public. The system understands the vehicle operating costs, and the only way to lower these costs is to make the roads as smooth as possible. Therefore, this methodology will utilise more expensive treatments such as asphalts, roughness and rutting regulation treatments, and rehabs and reconstructions. Again, not recommending this methodology as it is the most expensive treatments that absorb large amounts of our budget. The fourth optimization and prioritization method is a combination of the previous two, which is minimizing agency and user costs. This is the most common methodology used by councils. It looks at treatments that both lowers council's costs and at the same time lowering the user costs. And the last method is maximizing the network PCI. This methodology looks at maximizing the coverage of bituminous works. It sees cracking as the prime defect, and so maximizes network coverage with the cheapest treatments available and tries to ignore roughness and rutting. Therefore, it tends to select spray seals over asphalt and tries to avoid expensive rehabs and reconstructions. The methodology is also a common option for most councils where roughness and rutting may not be a major issue on low volume urban 50k streets. When compared to the methodology of minimizing agency and user costs, it will select the straight, for example, 10 mil SAM treatment, seal treatment, and ignore the correction course. So The methodology 1, which is maximising asset values, is selected if the network is in good condition and council has a healthy budget. As most councils generally have tight funds, then methodology 4, i.e. minimising the agency and user costs, is the most common selection, along with methodology 5 if users are tolerant with the roughness and rutting. The other point to consider is that the cost-benefit ratio. In method 4, i.e. minimising agency and user costs, the cost-benefit ratio plays a major role. As council is trying to save money with cheaper treatments, the system compares the cost of the treatments to the benefit of the community. For example, if the PMS selects a $50,000 treatment on a road that carries only 50 vehicles a day, then the system sees a negative cost-benefit ratio. So it compares the cost of the treatment to the benefit for the community. It will look at other roads where it sees a positive cost benefit and spend the $50,000 on a road carrying, say, 500 plus vehicles a day. So methodology 4, minimise agency and user costs, will only treat a road with a positive cost benefit ratio and ignore roads with a near zero or negative cost benefit ratio. However, in methodology 1 and 5, the cost-benefit ratio plays no role and the PMS performs the works. Many councils would opt to use methodologies 4 and 5 above. They often use methodology 4 for 3 years and on the 4th year use methodology 5 and use that pattern through a 20-year program. By using methodology 5 every 4th year, i.e. maximising network PCI, it ensures those negative cost-benefit ratio roads get a look in. However, councils may just use methodology 5, maximising network PCI, if roughness is also not an issue. The results section. After having carefully thought about the different scenarios, I have adopted 9 different distinct scenario types, combining a host of different optimization methods. The optimization methods were predominantly minimizing agency and user costs, maximizing the network PCI, and a combination of both. I have used PCI or maintaining PCI as a constraint or budgets as a constraint. I have run these scenarios for both the Armidale and Guyra network, mindful that the PCI, the area weighted average PCI for Armidale was 8 and for Guyra 6.77. For initial simplicity, I am doing comparisons of the 2 networks. I have not broken down the networks into the hierarchy of roads, but I'm just keeping them as Network A Armidale and Network B or 2 Guyra. The work rules have been run out over 10 years, thus being able to see a host of different deterioration conditions. I have then collated that data into the total predicted capital for 10 years. The total predicted capital works for each council out over 10 years for each different scenario type. It's worth noting also the trade-off or the maintenance trend that would come from each different scenario. It's well known that a trend of a optimization method that employs more rehab and reconstruction or renewal should reduce maintenance, and equally a reduction in those treatments will give a trade-off of increased operational or maintenance. I have then collated the total costs of both capital and operational out over 10 years for each council. I've then considered then of that total, what is then the percentage of capital and operational that would be expected for each network for each of those 9 scenarios. And I've looked at what will be the achieved PCI. What is going to be the overall quality network that we'll be creating as a result of each of those scenarios? So they've all been run, and as we can see, there is also budget constrained. So I've applied the budget numbers that I just indicated in a previous slide and used those to see the equivalent. They do appear rather high in the budget area. That is most likely because the treatment courses that I've opted for are straight out maintenance or straight out rehab. As indicated at the start, the purpose of this exercise is a comparison of the network conditions both before and after optimisation of works for the two council road networks. The objectives were for a harmonisation of the two previous Armidale and Guyra Council sealed road subnetworks and to quantify the savings that can be achieved by using advanced modelling and optimisation techniques to plan the future maintenance requirements for a road network. This study involved developing 10-year works programs designed to determine the future capital budgets over 10 years for the new council, but treating the previous councils as sub-networks of the new council for comparison purpose. And in that order, strategies are put in place to keep the current pavement condition in place for Armidale, or reduce if need be, to fulfil the second requirement, which is to improve the overall PCI of the previous Guyra Council roads that have a demonstrated reduction in pavement quality. And also an analysis of the complete ARC or the combined networks, but by applying scenarios of an optimised works program for the complete network, maintaining the road networks of each respective council at its current condition, and then allowing for discrete modifications to the overall separate networks condition to allow for a longer term harmonisation of each network into a single combined network, using PCI primarily as a pavement health as an indicator of achieving those results over 10 years. One of the first optimisation scenarios that would jump up off the page, purely because of its reduced costs in overall 10 years capital and operational, is scenario number 7. This scenario is to be strongly supported purely on the basis of the lowest overall costs by the to the two ex-councils and retaining a PCI of 7.5. Admittedly, a decrease in overall pavement condition for Armidale, but certainly an increase in overall condition for the Guyra network. The sub-optimisation of the individual road hierarchy sub-networks involving further combinations of work rules, i.e. breaking down the network into the hierarchy of arterial and collector and local access, and then applying work rules for selecting of candidates to each of those hierarchies, would give a much more accurate forecast of longer term work strategies that would better target the roughness and PCI deficiencies within each council network. However, this exercise is one of comparing the straight out networks of both ex-councils. This is the complete 10-year picture of scenario 7, and on the left hand side we can see that we're targeting a PCI, in this case 7.5. Again, a 0.5 less PCI index than Armidale, but almost a 1 point out of 10 increase in the condition for the overall Guyra network. The optimisation method I've used is minimising agency and user costs. Again, this is likely to look for the cheaper treatments. As we can see over the 10 years from 2017 to 2026 for Armidale, that by taking a 7.58 target PCI, we still reduce our PCI even further. Not an optimum situation. Year 2, 2018, attracts a reasonably sizable budget of $4.24 million, and then it tracks down slowly, as you would expect, by the PCI reducing from 8 to 6, and therefore removal of the more expensive rehab options. For GIRA, the lift in PCI from 6.77 to 7.5 would necessitate year 1 in a large body of works, and then each subsequent year after that still has a reasonable large body of work to lift that standard of their network to 7.5. Again, this produces the lowest overall costing for both capital and operational over 10 years for the two councils. However, a detailed assessment of the type of treatments would need to be carried out. The understanding is that these are likely to be lower cost treatments, more ceiling works, particularly as the case of GIRA having a large body of its road network greater than 25 years of age for the wearing course. For the other 8 scenarios, an assessment of their benefits include that for optimization scenario 1, where we retain the two networks at their current PCI, and we'll use optimization methods of a combination of firstly minimizing agency and user costs, and then maximizing the network PCI for the last 5 years, is obviously more expensive than the scenario 7, whereby all networks are to be migrated to a condition index of 7.5. Optimization scenario number 2, which is the same as scenario 7, but with optimization strategy of maximizing the network condition and minimizing the agency and user costs for a fixed PCI of 7.5. It's much more expensive than scenario 7 over the 10 years, with a higher number of rehabs included as part of the proposed treatments. Scenario number 3, which is one where we transition Armidale from PCI 8 to 7.5 and GIRA from 6.5 to 7.5 over 10 years, and optimizing by minimizing agency and user costs. This is probably a more relevant scenario than scenario 7, and should be equally treated as a potential model for further investigation because of its ability to transition works gradually from 8 to 7.5 for Armidale, rather than dropping off the standard in the first year. Armidale would incur a higher expenditure in the initial year and then tailing off. GIRA required expenditure naturally enough tracking upwards. Optimization number 4, which is for a fixed PCI of 7 for both networks, and again a combination of maximizing the network PCI and minimizing the agency and user costs, gave a much higher overall network cost compared to scenario 2 and 7. Scenario number 5, which is as per scenario 4 above, but with a fixed PCI of 8, much higher cost to allow for the higher condition improvement works in GIRA, whereas Armidale's budget stayed pretty much on course. Optimization scenario number 6, which is the retention of the respective network PCIs, i.e. 8 and 6.5 respectively, with optimization by minimizing the agency and user costs, and the overall 10-year costs are substantially lower than the comparable scenario 1 due to the preference for less expensive treatments. All of these scenarios still present themselves as viable options or candidates for further consideration. Scenarios 8 and 9 utilised budget constraint rather than a PCI constraint over 10 years of optimised programs. Scenario 8 used a budget constraint, but using an optimisation by maximising the network PCI. Scenario 9 also used a budget constraint, as above, as shown for the current budgets of both Guyra and Armidale listed, but with the optimisation by minimising agency and user costs. The overall cost of this scenario was less than the more expensive optimisation of maximising the network PCI. However, as expected, the long-term PCI was better for the higher cost option, scenario 8. Following all of these results, I have adopted PMS Scenario 7 as a means by which the two councils can focus on asset maintenance, long-term strategies and harmonisation, which involves not just selection of worst treatments or the worst treatments for the whole or both separate networks, but of a strategic approach to the 10-year long-term works programs, which will likely involve a host of seal and rehab treatments, but at intervention times that will prevent those roads reaching their worst condition. By holding the two networks at a fixed PCI of 7.5 and using an optimisation of both minimising agency and user costs and maximising the network PCI, I would project that the council, while starting from the network condition of 2017 as shown in this graph, where the bulk of the overall pavement network is sitting around that 160 to 180 of overall roughness. I will then now show, after the 10 years, the migration of the roughness over the complete network from adopting scenario 7. And after scenario 7, this graph would indicate that after 10 years, that the larger bulk of the road network has now moved down to a network roughness of around 120 to about 140. In the host year or commencement year of 2017, the overall pavement condition index, i.e. for the combined two networks of Guyra and Armidale, is hovering around that 6.5 to about 7 of overall pavement condition, i.e. the largest component of around 170 kilometres is sitting just marginally under 7.0, and then there's two substantial lines of 160 kilometres that are between 8 and 8.5 to 9. So a reasonably good overall condition, but still with a worrying trend of the 100 kilometres to about 160 kilometres, i.e. almost a third of to if not greater of the overall network in that PCI range of between 6 and 7. This now demonstrates the PCI after 10 years of optimized works, again using the combination of maximizing the network PCI and minimising agency and user costs, and retaining a fixed PCI of 7.5. Over 10 years, the whole network has now shown a tendency, i.e. 2/3 of the overall seal network is between 8 and 9. So this would indicate a sizable improvement in roughness over 10 years. In conclusion, this case study has shown that for the combined networks of Armidale, Jimerick and Gyra, use of an advanced asset management technique such as life cycle modelling and optimisation of works programs can lead to a different approach to how short to medium works, i.e. 1 to 10 years, can be strategised, with an emphasis on balancing the worst first dilemma and strategic roadworks that allow for an earlier intervention and prevention of early deterioration onset. For the organisation, i.e. the asset managers, the financial and planning managers, as well as the elected representatives as decision makers, to have a scientific approach to, say, the 1 to 10 and 10 to 20 years of planning that allows for forecast financial and resource planning. The various scenarios would provide a logical series of future work options for the two councils that could be part of the suite of documentation for community consultation. Each scenario displays a variation of the optimisation of the whole of the respective network, i.e. Armidale and Gyra, and the subsequent required budget and resultant pavement condition. The subsequent scenario conditions will then produce a host of yearly works treatments, including rehabilitations, reseals and maintenance, and for specific roads and road segments in both Armidale and Gyra, as dependent on the optimisation process. Community consultation can then be presented with these scenarios for the overall long-term approach as to what will allow for better harmonisation. However, it must be strongly pointed out that this is a first and broad assessment of the two networks. Much further refinement would be needed to reclassify the Armidale and Gyra road network segments into a hierarchy system of major and minor roads, i.e. collector and local access, urban and rural, and then reapply the optimisation and prioritisation routines of the PMS, but also in consideration of the type of intervention triggers that the community may consider warranted for greater importance, such as user safety, school bus routes, roads of common economic significance. These roads will then be treated with a prioritisation for the new combined network. Various scenarios should then be assessed as to what would constitute the most logical and permissible against the Council Road Authority's ability to fund the capital and maintenance program, bearing in mind that a reduction in capital rehab and renewals to allow for a reduction in the overall budget to help facilitate an overall condition improvement in the red network will also give rise to a disproportionate increase in the operational or maintenance requirements of that network. Further investigations into more refined works optimisation and prioritisation, combined with the results of community consultation levels of service, a combined condition assessment program for the complete network, a better capture and filtering of the traffic data and traffic class will all lead to more accurate strategies for longer term works programming and make the harmonisation process that much easier. The PMS Works optimisation and prioritisation software has been demonstrated to be an effective tool in allowing for the first take broad brush approach for multiple combinations of possible work treatments, and allowing for the predictive algorithms of deterioration modelling to be employed, i.e., we are both combining strategic works but also applying asset management with deterioration at the same time. And this would otherwise take a much longer and exhaustive time if we were to produce manually. I would recommend it as part of an asset management system and program for the two combined road networks that a recognised deterioration modelling PMS such as the SMEC system would be extremely useful. Finally, a summary of the overall network after this investigation. Although the gyro roads may have been constructed to a lower design standard, widening of those existing roads is likely to be very expensive. I don't think that money should be spent at the expense of the preservation of the pavements in the rest of the network. However, if there is any new reconstruction, rehabilitation, whatever, that is deemed necessary as a major treatment due to failed pavements, then this should be carried out to the appropriate width. Unless, of course, the narrow width is causing safety issues at particular locations. If the roads are very narrow such that vehicles are moving onto the unsealed shoulders to pass, then this is a safety hazard and would also lead to accelerated edge drop and edge break of the seal. Such cases would have to be assessed individually. Secondly, the reason for the amalgamation was because the councils were deemed by the New South Wales Office of Local Government to be, inverted commas, not fit for the future and could not sustainably maintain their assets with their current rate income. This implies that if the current gyro road funding was maintained, then not only would the gyro roads be at a lower standard to the Armidale roads, then the existing gyro road standard would continue to drop and the network would become even more expensive to maintain. Roads in poor condition can cost substantially more to maintain than roads in good condition. To demonstrate this would require an analysis using the PMS. Therefore, in the longer term, not increasing the funding to the gyro road network is not the solution. Money will have to be diverted from the Armidale rate base, possibly leading to a dropping of standards across the Armidale road network, or a rate rise for the gyro residents will have to be made to get the additional funding required. And lastly, any backlog of gyro maintenance works, this does not include widening if the pavement is still in good condition, should be addressed early, since in the long term this is probably the cheapest scenario for the council and the best outcome for the community. If additional funding provided by the New South Wales Government will pay for the requirements to address this backlog, the PMS can again be used to analyse this. Thank you.